On this episode of our Tall Tales, we're bringing you to the source of the tall tale of the Devil's Hole and what has been said about the Devil's Hole and some of the rumors and tall tales and folklore that surrounds this vertical cave for nearly 200 years.
So if y'all ever see me running out of here, you might want to run too, because I've got something mad. Some stuff that people have made up. They saying that aliens live down in there, and the Short Mountain Squaller lives in there. Some of the tall tales are actually things that happen that are hard to believe. Sometimes you hear of things that happened that, well, could that have really happened, or is it real? And it's not our job to place that judgment. That's up to you, the listener, the viewer. So here we go. I want to talk about somebody that lived within walking distance of where we are here, that wrote many books, including this one, Fletch Woodward and his troubles with the bad town boys, as he calls them, the local citizens that referred to him as the most hated man in McMinnville. Living in the 1800s, you either had friends or enemies, and very few of the just passive, well, it's just another person. You had sides you picked, especially if you lived on Court Square.
Community TVTN is brought to you by Security Federal Savings Bank, proudly serving the community we call home.
Grace Family Pharmacy announces new medication packaging service. It provides a simpler, safer medication experience through convenient, personalized packaging using the latest in pharmacy robotics. Our phone number is 931-473-6418.
McMinnville, you're a great place to be. McMinnville, Tennessee.
High quality leads with prolific internet marketing and invigorating web design services that will energize your business. We are SiriusSEM. Call today or visit us at SiriusSEM.com.
Dr. Pepper. Good for life, good for the community.
Welcome to another edition of Community Insider. Join us as we travel Middle Tennessee, uncovering history and experiencing the adventure of unique stories and events coming to you inside your community.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Womack, and welcome to this edition of Community Insiders. We bring you to the foot of Burger Mountain, located in Short Mountain, Tennessee, Cannon County, Tennessee. On this episode of our Tall Tales, we're bringing you to the source of the tall tale of the Devil's Hole and what has been said about the Devil's Hole and some of the rumors and tall tales and folklore that surrounds this vertical cave for nearly 200 years. We have Mr. Lynn Underwood, who is an avid hunter. He is a coyote hunter, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about that in just a bit, but we want to thank him and Hunter, also his son, who is taking us on this trip. As you're watching this, this is several feet off the ground. It's a pretty tall cave for Middle Tennessee area, but at the same time, getting there is going to be the hard part. And so that's what Lynn and Hunter both is going to do, is going to get us up there, along with the camera person, my son, Colin Womack. So welcome to this edition. Stay tuned. There's more coming this way. Lynn, thank you so much for this opportunity.
No problem, anytime.
So you tell me, we mentioned you as a hunter, but you're also an avid coyote hunter.
I do coyote hunting for farmers and stuff just to help them out, keep coyotes out of the cattle, goats or whatever. I just enjoy hunting them.
I got you.
And usually when I kill them, I skin them and I sell the pelts or make stuff out of them.
Wow, that's unbelievable. So your background also comes at one time. I'm all about us staying as safe as we can on this trip. Public safety was something that you did for some years. You served as a service officer, right?
I was a police officer and a county deputy. I was on the fire department. I was a first responder. And now I'm just doing the hunting deal.
There you go. There you go.
Enjoying it a little bit.
There you go. Y'all got a beautiful place. We'll be showing you some shots of that and what this means. Now, one of the biggest questions we're going to have asked from people that's watching, how can we go see this? Because of the scheduling with his hunting and all the things that they do, it can be set up, and we'll be giving you that information so that you can contact if you're a farmer or someone who has, coyotes that's, bothering your cattle or something like that. You can contact him. Or if you'd like to set up a tour, of course, it's not free, but they can set that up and you can talk to them by way of phone, and we'll let you get set up on that. But what can we be looking out for? I know it's not an easy path, but you got some paths up there, right?
Yeah, I can get within 3/4 of the way to it in this thing.
I got you.
But it's still an uphill walk, and it's going to take a little while.
I got you.
And it's hot, and it's going to be hotter up there.
Wow, I figured it'd be cooler.
Well, when you start climbing that hill, it don't matter.
I got you. It don't matter. So you talk about the hill, Burger Hill. There's some other names for that hill. Going back in time, the mountain has been called several different things. It's pretty steep. Like, what would you say is the rate of the climb?
Oh, it's fairly steep. And mainly it's rocks, and where it's got dead leaves on it, it's going to be a little tricky to walk through it. There's going to be some briars and there's going to be weeds.
Yeah.
But as far as snakes, I've only seen one snake up there, and that's been it.
Wow, that's good. That's good for us, especially. Now, Mike West, who was a writer for Cannon Courier, did a story on this back, actually more than once. There's actually Tennessee Stories of Ghosts mentions the Devil's Hole. It mentions it was located near Blues Hill, Tennessee. That is basically across the field from where we're at. It's basically the same place. And of course, the more widely known Devil's Hole, which is located in Nevada, in the desert. But of course, this one's ranging what some spelunkers went down and actually measured the hole of being about 110 feet. We're not going to be going down in the hole. We're going to get some shots in the hole. We're going to see what we can capture, and you're going to get to come along with us. So I think it's about time before it gets too dark.
Yeah, because it'll be getting dark in about another 45 minutes to an hour up there.
And that's one thing we're going to be watching for. Big stories. One of those stories is a man threw his wife in there, and you could hear screams. There was a young boy that fell in the hole. I'll be letting Lynn tell some of the tall tales that he's heard from that hole. And actually, one of the oldest books that we found actually has, for some strange reason, there was some churches that actually met and camped around that hole.
It's a Seventh-day Adventist church that done it. Some of the young men would come up there and play music. They would bring horns and stuff, and on a quiet night, you could hear it for miles.
Wow. Do you remember that?
I don't remember it, but that's what some old folks told me.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Well, stay tuned to that and much more on this edition of Tall Tales on Community Insider.
As we continue our adventure to the Devil's Hole, some things about the Short Mountain area. It's located in the northeastern part of Cannon County. The mountain looms above adjacent portions of DeKalb and Warren counties. And of course, it's the highest point of the eastern Highland Rim at about 2,074 feet in elevation. Short Mountain now rises alone above the Central Basin. It's 20 miles to the west of the Cumberland Plateau. The mountain consists of several smaller hills, including Burger Hill and others around, with a watershed of two main creeks, which runs to the east, Mountain Creek, and one that runs to the west, Stones River. Near Burger Hill and Short Mountain, you'll find some beautiful places and really all over Cannon County. It's a great place to bring your family, and several local events throughout the year includes the Cannon County Senior Center, which hosts the Good Old Days. That usually happens somewhere in the middle of May. Other events throughout the year includes the Moonlight Drive-In in the center of Woodbury. Also, the Middle Tennessee Mule Skinners has an event every year. The Summit House, several antique shops downtown Woodbury, and of course the well-known Short Mountain Distillery. Very close to Burger Hill, actually just right around the hill, the Short Mountain Distillery hosts several events throughout the year. Almost every quarter and every season, you'll notice they do events, craft fairs, and many other things. So check out their website for the Short Mountain Distillery.
Some of the tales that we've heard about this is a man and a woman come up here and they got into an argument and the man pushed the wife off in there. And I've also heard around 1900 that the man went missing. Nobody could find him. And they think he was murdered and they threw his body off in there. But the last people that had been down in there did not find any human remains whatsoever. All they found was a small snake and some pupfish. Because there is water running through, because there's another spring right up here that goes down into the ground. Some stuff that people have made up. They're saying that aliens live down in there, along with an invisible cow, and the Short Mountain Squaller lives in there.
Talk about the Short Mountain Squaller.
It's supposed to be a Bigfoot creature,
Okay.
about 7 foot tall, hairy, and sounds about like a bear when he growls. But I've lived up here for going on 20 years. I ain't never seen it or heard it. And I'm a hunter. If it would have been here, I'd have been hunting it. All right, bring another one.
Tony, you still rolling?
I just ended it.
Go ahead, do it again.
See it, honey. Are we ready?
Ready.
That was straight down.
Let's do one more.
That's a good 34-second fall time.
Yeah.
On a 5-pound rock.
I'll just throw a middle one. See what it does.
You might have moved it.
That might be a problem. We might have a little rock.
First year I found this, my wife told me about it, her and her mother. But it took me forever to find it.
Smaller. Right, the smaller right there. Let's try. 5 seconds.
One more.
Here's a bigger one.
My wife and mother has lived here since the early 50s. My mother-in-law's been here since the early 50s. And they heard it from older people too, and they told me about it, and I just happened to stumble up on it one day while up here running around looking at the hill, just seeing what's here. And this ain't the only hole that's on this hill. There's about 7 more on down, and there's one more out this way that's got water running in it. So this ain't the only one. And from my understanding from the older people that I've talked to, the reason why it's called the Devil's Hole in the late 1700s, early 1800s, they found the hole and throwed rocks off in it, and it went forever before it hit, and they classified it as a gateway to hell. But there's a bottom to it, I know that. But as far as any creatures living in it, I ain't never seen none come out of it. So if y'all ever see me running out of here, you might want to run too, because I've got something mad.
Hunter, you like to hunt. Is that why you named it?
No, actually, before he was born, me and his mama was talking one night, and I wanted to name him Remington Winchester. But we decided with that name, he would be 35 years old before he got out of grammar school. So my wife liked to name Hunter, and she stuck the name Remington Hunter. And since he was 3 years old, able to walk, he's been 3 foot behind me no matter where I went. And as you see, he ain't far from me tonight. But we've been all over this hill coon hunting, and I've always been told, you ever get a kid into hunting that'll never have money to do drugs? Well, I've done that, because he ain't got money to do nothing. He spends it all on dog food and dogs and shells.
And barely have enough for gas.
So Hunter, tell me about yourself. You like hunting? What's some of the stuff that you like doing?
Well, I like deer hunting. Well, mainly any of the hunting, even coyote. But mostly the main thing I like and enjoy is coon hunting. So we started in one time. One guy wanted to come up and hunt since we had plenty of them on camera. Well, came in, he ended up having a pup. Dog looked in the face. It was over. I still got the dog at the house.
But he's been hunting since he was 5 years old. I was with him when he killed his first deer, same as I was with his older brother and his sister. And now he just stuck with it, and he likes it just as much as I do. Actually, I just like being outside. And doing stuff like this, I enjoy.
For those that may be watching, they're interested in maybe contacting you about coyote hunting, either one of y'all. What's your specialty with capturing the coyotes?
He traps them, I just shoot them. And when I shoot them, I end up bringing them home, skinning them, and tanning the hides. No matter how big they are, unless they just got plumb mangy, but I never leave them laying on the farmer's land. I always bring them out. That way, the farmer's not having to deal with it.
Is that where you get your nickname? Critter Getter?
Kinda.
How that come?
How that happened was, at the time I didn't have a four-wheeler, so all I had was a truck. So I kept using it deer hunting every day. You know, kept bringing coyotes, coons, deer, kept bringing them out, and well, one day I kind of got bored after I done took the stickers off the front of the truck when we had it. Took it off, and I'm trying to think of a name for it. Well, I was on my phone scrolling, it popped up Critter Getter on it. I was like, oh, I'll get my sister to make it. Put it on the front windshield, and then I kept driving it to school. And that's how the nickname started.
Speaking of family, tell me just a little bit about your family.
I've been married for 26 years to my wife, Brenda. We live on her grandparents' place. They actually bought it in the early 50s. And right now we're keeping it all but 2 acres into the same family. And that's my goal, keeping it in the family. I've got a daughter, I've got a son-in-law, and 3 grandkids. And if I know grandkids was this much fun, I'd had them first. But I love being around them, and they all know what I do, and some of them enjoys it just as much as I do.
There's been some stories about even panthers being up here. What's the story behind that?
Now we've heard there's black panthers up here. I've been up here all times, day and night, and I've never seen one, never heard one, and I've got cameras out everywhere and never get a picture of one. But I do know down in Gasaway, which ain't far away, a guy down there legally had black panthers and cougars and stuff like that, and I do know some of them got loose. But I don't know if they've ever caught them or somebody shot them or what.
Any other stories before we take off? The story about the dog was
Yeah, there was a dog run a fox into a hole somewhere on this hill, and it stayed in there for weeks. And when it come out the other end, that it had bare spots on its fur, its claws was wore down, and it was almost starved to death. That it was in there that long. And I was told on the other side of this hill there is a bird cave that you can walk in to come into it, but I ain't never found that one.
I want to talk about somebody that lived within walking distance of where we are here that wrote many books, including this one, Fletch Woodward and his troubles with the bad town boys, as he calls them, the local citizens that referred to him as the most hated man in McMinnville. Living in the 1800s, you either had friends or enemies, and very few of the just passive, well, it's just another person. You had sides you picked, especially if you lived on Court Square. You've got the little fort on South Court Square where Fletch Woodward lived, as it was called in later years. You've got the Warren House Inn sitting behind the camera where we're filming today. And you've got the McMinnville Inn across the way where City Hall, that has been a bank for many years, is located today, among other things here, businesses, homes, etc. Looking back behind me at the Chamber of Commerce building, you've got a view of modern day McMinnville. Go back to Fletch Woodward and 1870s. He lived here with his family and had a great photography business, a medical business, etc., etc., and talking about being the most hated man in McMinnville, being the only photographer who's going to take your picture. You just swallowed your pride and had him snap some shots and went next door to Benjamin Hill's Warren House Inn, stopped in the tavern and said what you thought about him out of hearing range. And so that was one of the many things that went on. And can you believe a person survived all these years being for the Union Army? The end of the Civil War needs to happen, and everybody else, including General Benjamin Hill of the Confederacy, is your next door neighbor, and all the other neighbors being for the Confederacy. With a few exceptions, but most everybody in walking distance of Court Square Confederate except Mr. Woodward and his family. So you've got a lot of interesting things. As I say, he was McMinnville's doctor, one of the many doctors that have served here over the decades. McMinnville's first photographer out of many that have followed suit and taken up that tradition. A phrenologist that reads the bumps on your head to tell you what your life is going to be like. And there's still people today that follow that line of thinking. He was a social thinker, referred to himself as a liberal, and had all of these ideas to the point that he created a school of open thinking at his home. But yet again, the most hated man in McMinnville by the movers and groovers that modern day streets are named after, as we look at those things. A lot of interesting thoughts with him because of the hatred that they had for him. He's going across the street with his friend, the town marshal, to the other place of libation at Warren House Inn. Is here across the street where they go is the Mountain Inn, and so they're talking trash about the people on the other side of the street near his home, talking trash about him. And so that hatred ensues, including the town marshal, one of the few friends Woodward probably actually had, and vice versa. And the town marshal comes into this story because he's arresting all the prominent town citizens, the men especially, for doing some of the same things for which he's guilty. Down below us is what we call Depot Bottom, Depot Hill, Depot Street as it's known today. At that time it was College Street because it walked from the train yards all the way up to Tennessee Female College, later Southern School of Photography. And down on this hill were houses of ill repute, as we might call them, to have a nicer term for that. And so the ladies of the evening were meeting with prominent town citizens, only to be arrested by the town marshal that would lock them up and return to those same places himself. At some point, someone in the lovely city of McMinnville is tired of the town marshals doing what they're doing, etc., etc., and he is murdered at the back of one of these houses on Depot Hill at this point in time. Mr. Woodward, being the doctor closest in range, helps with the murder scenario, including performing the autopsy on this man to prove what he died from and how it happened. Gives all the information to the court system, etc., and then is later framed for that man's murder, his only friend, or one of his better friends in the city. An interesting tale. And so it makes you wonder how that came about. And at some point in history prior to this, before this murder, to get rid of him, Mr. Hill, as we've said, the Confederate general that owned Warren House Inn over next to us, here where Tri-County Bank is today, decides, I'm going to get rid of Woodward once and for all, and sets fire to Woodward's house to burn him out, but also burns his inn to make it look like an accident, burns his own establishment. That's a lot of faith, people. Could somebody really take what we would think of today as a massive source of income for anybody, people from all over, everywhere staying, including the President of the United States, Andrew Jackson, stayed in that inn with General Hill, and burn that to get rid of the guy you don't like next door, his house included. So the little fort on Southport Square is built on the same spot as Woodward's first home, and it's called that because of the stick picket fence he built up around it to look like a fort from the 1600s or something, because he was so fed up with the way things were. This was the side yard to divide his property from Hill's property. And when that didn't work, well, let's frame him for the murder that happened 3 years later. And we'll get him gone. He finally escapes at Nashville jail, where he was kept for however long, and eventually writes a book about that bad jail in Nashville, as one of the other books that he published. Makes it to Texas after his escape, gets a lawyer that believes him, and fights and is exonerated and is allowed to return back to McMinnville as a free man. But whoever killed Woodward, you'll have to read the book to find out Fletch's opinion as to who it was never brought to justice. And most likely someone that one of our favorite city streets in McMinnville is named after, based on what he says in the book. I'll leave that to you to figure out.
We want to thank Bruce Atnip for bringing us this other edition of Tall Tales right here on Community Insider. We're going to close with the obituary of Dr. J. Fletch Woodward. He died at his home in this place last Tuesday morning and was buried Wednesday evening in Riverside Cemetery. Reverend T.W. Nolan of the Methodist Church officiated at the funeral service. Dr. Woodward was born in Warren County in 1838 and has been a citizen of the town ever since, being the son of Reverend Isaac Woodward, a prominent Methodist minister of his day. He was 75 years of age and leaves a wife and 3 grown sons. He has been in poor health for quite a while, having suffered a stroke of paralysis some 6 months ago, from which he never fully recovered. He was a man of strong likes and dislikes, but without deception. He had peculiar views upon many subjects, but was honest in his belief. He had his faults, but who among us is without fault? If there be such, let him cast the first stone. We bury his faults out of sight with his body and cherish in memory only that which was good. The bereaved family has our sincere sympathy.